Hi everyone, my name is James Howard and I played Siegfried Sassoon in Black Eyed Theatre's production of Not About Heroes. And Black Eyed have asked me to talk a little bit about the experience of being in that production and on tour. In the autumn of 2014, which frighteningly is 6 years ago now, it was an extraordinary tour, timed to coincide with the 100-year anniversary of the start of the First World War. For those of you that don't know how a Black Eyed tour works, I didn't either, but it's a fantastic company that tour up and down the country to theatres large and small of all shapes and sizes. And when I first saw the schedule of where we were going to be performing, I couldn't believe the range of theatres we were going to visit, everywhere from the tiny, beautiful Chipping Norton Theatre to the massive Buxton Opera House and everywhere in between, Edinburgh, Poole, Malvern, Margate, some really fantastic venues. And that for me was part of the excitement of doing the job, was the thought that I was going to get to see all of these places over the course of a few months. Black Eyed tour in relatively small numbers. There were only two of us actually in the show, myself and Ben, who played at Wilfred Owen, and two stage managers, the brilliant Ali and Claire. And so there were just the four of us in a van, going up and down the country and putting up the set, doing the show and taking down the set, sometimes in the space of 24 hours. Not About Heroes is an extraordinary play about two of the great war poets, Sassoon and Owen. And although it's not too much of a plot spoiler, I hope to say that Owen died in the last days of the First World War. The story is about the two poets meeting in Edinburgh in a hospital where they were both recovering from various forms of injury and shell shock. And what's beautiful about the piece is that we see the friendship that develops between the two poets, how Sassoon was almost a teacher for Owen and encouraged him to write and to actually publish some of his early work, and then to encourage him to develop that poetry and to push himself and to arguably become a better poet than Sassoon. Unfortunately, because Owen died 1 week before the end of the war, we didn't really get to see what other poetry he might have created. And Sassoon lives with a real guilt about that, and the play shows him reliving the horrors of the war, but also whether or not there was more he could have done to protect Owen and to encourage him not to go back to the front line. The play is full of some of the most extraordinary poetry that both men write, and it's also a wonderfully touching story of, as I say, friendship and the creative process between the two men. Sassoon is quite an arrogant figure at times, and Owen is portrayed as being quite nervous when he first meets Sassoon. But as the play continues, we see a real strength of feeling develop between the two men. And the tragedy of the story, as I say, is that Owen doesn't survive the war, and we don't get to see how their friendship may have played out when the war had ended. I think the main challenge of the production was the fact that there were just the two of us on stage, and we had to develop a real trust with each other. Ben and I had both been to the Bristol Vic Theatre School, and I think there was something in our characters and our nature that just worked and clicked, and we had an incredible trust between the two of us, almost from day one of rehearsals. And so no matter how tired we were, no matter how challenging the day had been in either getting to a theatre or putting up the set, or if one of us was feeling a bit tired, we we both got on that stage and performed the show and had an extremely happy time together. I think the other part of the experience for me that was very, very happy was not only seeing such a fantastic range of places in the country, but also the bond that developed between the four of us. So we would do the show, we'd strike the set, we'd go back to either digs or a hotel, and we became like a little family, and we did silly things like doing bake-off competitions and cooking for each other, and really just making the most of seeing and experiencing the places we went to. I think one of the most moving parts of the job for me was the fact that we were performing at the same time as the centenary commemorations, and wherever we went in the country there were displays and exhibitions to remind people of the sacrifices that the soldiers made. And whenever we went to places like Winchester or Durham or Norwich, I would go to the cathedrals and see the displays of poppies and some of the other exhibitions that were on. And it was a very humbling experience to know that we were doing a play about these two real-life figures. I also went to Mel's at one point to see Sassoon's grave. And it was just a very humbling reminder that these two men, Owen and Sassoon, who we hold up to be these great poets, were real men who suffered and as far as Owen is concerned, died during the course of the war. And it was very, very moving. It was one of the most rewarding and exciting challenges of my career. And not just on stage, but off. We were like a little family, travelling around the country in a van and having the chance to perform this extraordinary play was a real gift. Looking back at the script, it reminded me how moving it was to be able to speak some of the beautiful poetry of Sassoon, and one verse stood out which I wanted to share with you. It comes from the end of the play, and he says, "When I find new loveliness to praise, and things long known shine out in sudden grace, then will I think, he moves before me now. So he will never come but in delight. And as it was in life, his name shall be wonder, awakening in a summer dawn, and youth that dying touched my lips to song." Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed sharing some of my memories of my time with Not About Heroes. Take care and keep safe.